All right. Well, welcome everybody to today's startBUILD webinar on the future of experience in real estate. So my name is Julian Kesselman. I'm the founder of startBUILD. And when we began this community 18 months ago, we had a vision to connect up entrepreneurs and innovators in Australia and across the region that are interested in shaping the future of what the real estate industry looks like. And we're very pleased to see the community continue to grow across the country. And really over the last few months, as we've been forced online, what it's meant is it's created even more diversity in the community than what we saw before. So 2 months ago, we ran a session on the future of technology in construction, looking at how digitization in construction was producing more efficient and more effective work sites. Last month, we looked at smart buildings and the role in which technology and innovation can play in making us more resilient when shocks like the one that we're experiencing have hit us. And today I'm very excited about this topic in particular. Actually, I think it comes at a unique time in our experience of real estate, and very excited at the views that our three panelists will bring. So Lynn from Ground Floor, Soren from Work Club, and Dominic from Air Service. We'll get into the panel discussion in just a minute. So for everybody that's dialing in from home, this is an interactive webinar. I know that you've been doing more webinars over the last couple of months than you have ever in your life. This one will feel very, very different. The idea here is to give you an opportunity to engage with our speakers in multiple ways. So each of the speakers will tell you a little bit about themselves, about their business, and also how they see the future of experience in real estate. And while they're talking, I know that there'll be questions that bubble up for you. So please feel free to save them in the Q&A function, and I'll pick them up and weave them into the discussion as we go along. Secondly, we're going to ask some poll questions, which if you don't feel game to ask a question, it's the simplest way to engage in the conversation. So click, cast your vote, and it'll give us some real-time data for our panelists to respond to and share their perspectives. And then lastly, there's the chat function, which is a catch-all for however you would like to engage. So if you have any thoughts on what's happening in the discussion, any articles or comments that you would like to share, or indeed, it's a really easy way to say hello. So we've got a diversity of people that are joining the call. What I would love is for you to say hello, tell us where you're from, and what really drew you to today's topic. And before we get underway, I'd like to also mention RealTechX, which is the sponsor of the startBUILD community. RealTechX is my day job. It is an innovation program supported by Taronga Ventures to connect later stage businesses like Ground Floor and Work Club with corporates in the real estate sector like Dexus, Lendlease, and ISPT. So that program, the first cycle of our program will be drawing to a close in July, and we will be delighted to have you all attend the end of program showcase. And then also, if you or anyone else in your network would be interested in finding out more, we'll be opening up applications for the 2021 program. The webinar today will be 60 minutes. As I said, I will give each of the speakers an opportunity to introduce themselves in just a moment, and then we will open up for the panel discussion. So let's get underway. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce these three speakers who we've worked with closely in various capacities. So both Lynn and Soren are participants in the RealTechX program with Ground Floor and Work Club respectively, and Dominic from Air Services has also been quite closely involved with the community. Lynn's platform, Ground Floor, which she'll tell you a little bit more about in just a moment, is offering a smart parcel locker system. You can think of like a click and collect for office buildings, residences, basically anywhere to connect up the last mile of e-commerce and online retailing with consumers. Soren runs Work Club, which I'm very pleased to say that I'm in here today, not dialing in from home. Work Club is much more than a co-working space. It's really a community, and I'm really looking forward to Soren's contributions, how he thinks about experience shaping the future of community building in real estate. I'm very glad to have Dominic join us as well as the Chief Executive Officer of Air Services. Air Services is a digital platform that connects real-world experiences with the end users that want to engage with them, particularly in the hotel space. So making sure that all of those great real world experiences are brought to the people that can make the most of them and really shape the holistic experience of that environment. So in just a moment, I'll give each of the speakers an opportunity to introduce themselves directly. But look, for a little bit of context, I wanted to really pose the question, how should we be thinking about the future of real estate, particularly in light of what's happened over the last few months? So, you know, we've all been thrust into a very different way of engaging with the real estate sector. On the whole, we've been pulled out of offices, and you know, we're no longer going to shopping centers, restaurants, cinemas, stadiums, and we've really been brought back into our homes and into domestic life. And I think on the one hand, that's created this incredible richness for us all at home, right? So people have reconnected with families. They've found, I guess, a new simple pleasure in what it's like to be at home. But then on the other hand, I feel that we've really spent a lot of time trying to recreate real world experiences from our home environment, right? So, I mean, even this is you know, a webinar, and there's lots of great things that can come from this context. But ultimately, it's not quite the same as being in place together. You don't have those serendipitous run-ins. It's not, you know, you're not able to share a drink together. And of course, I'm sure many of you have experienced it with your coworkers as well. There's a quality which is somewhat different to trying to engage over the internet. And to that end, I might throw up just our first poll for today. So the question that we're posing is, what do you miss most about going to the office? And I will share those answers in just a second. So please jump in and cast your vote. Now, I guess the question for me is, well, what does the future of real estate look like? So as we start to come back into the real world, right, what is going to draw us out of the safety and comfort of our home environments, right? It's probably quite easy for some of us, particularly the introverts amongst us, to continue to stay at home, right, and just revel in the ease of not dealing with traffic and being able to just engage in everything remotely. But for the real estate owners and operators, it's a really important question, right? Because it really comes down to, how do we create a richness of real world experience that's going to draw people back out of their home context and back into the beautiful offices and entertainment precincts and travel and all of those really rich experiences which don't quite equate to what we have online. And so, you know, that's the question we want to pose to all of our speakers today, and we'll hear their views in just a moment. So to wrap up, and before I hand over, I'll publish the results of this poll. All right, so the question that we posed was, what do you miss most about going to the office, right? There were a couple that said nothing, don't make me go in. Many of you were looking forward to working face-to-face with your colleagues, but fundamentally, it's about socializing, right? We've been able to, I think, connect with each other in a somewhat different way from home to home, right? And in some ways, that's opened up richer relationships, but it doesn't quite meet the same level of experience as being there face-to-face, being able to pop out with your coworkers for a coffee. And there's a real richness in experience that comes with being in the office. And so look, with that, I'm going to pause and hand over to the first of our speakers. So Lynn, it would be my pleasure to invite you to share a little bit about who you are, what Ground Floor does, and just your initial impressions on, you know, what it is that Ground Floor does to enhance experience in real estate.
Right, Julian. Well, thank you so much. So I'm Lynn, as Julian said, from Ground Floor.
Karen, here, Lynn.
Can you hear me?
Oh. Sorry, please continue. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I hope everyone can hear me now. Sorry. So as Julian said, I'm Lynn from Ground Floor. So thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this webinar. At Ground Floor, we are very passionate about delivering a fantastic experience in real estate. That's what we're all about. What I'm going to do is share my screen. We actually have a physical product, so we thought we could bring it to life a little bit by showing you a few pictures. So hopefully that's all good and my screen's come up. So we thought the best place to start might be just to talk about the experience of actually receiving a package. And this is something that probably everybody in this webinar has experienced that dreaded card there on the left. It's called the "Sorry We Missed You" card. And when you get one of those cards, you know that you're going to end up in the queue on the right, unfortunately, at the post office. And probably it's going to be during your lunch hour, or perhaps you're going to have to leave work early. And it's it really takes the pleasure out of shopping. So one of the things that Julian and Sana suggested to make this webinar more interactive was to do some polling. So we thought we might ask the audience if they could let us know if they've received one of these cards in the last 12 months. I'd be interested to see kind of how many of you are lining up at the post office regularly to get your parcels. While you're answering that question, I might just continue on, because whilst we're all experiencing that pain as an individual, of course, the buildings are also experiencing the pain. And these are just some photographs, and the picture on the left there is a residential building in Melbourne, and you can see this is quite typical. The packages are all stacked around the mailbox, and there's these new people out there called the parcel pirates. They're stealing the packages, so that's not a very secure way to receive your package. The middle picture is very disturbing, I find, because that's a brand new building and they're putting the parcels in the fire escape. So that's probably not a very good solution. The picture in the top right might be a little bit difficult to see, but this might be good for Soren's view. This is a co-working space, and they've actually got the parcels stacked right up to the shoulders of the people sitting at the desk there. And then finally, even at a attended concierge desk, you can see the picture there in the bottom corner. The concierge stepped away for just a few minutes, and there the package has been left. And so, what's going on with parcels? Well, this won't be surprising to anyone. We all read about it. We all experience it. But would you believe we're destined to receive 1 billion parcels in Australia by 2021? And it's growing at more than 10% per year. And that's having a huge impact on the buildings. A typical 200-unit apartment building gets about 10,000 packages a year. And some of these commercial office towers are headed towards 70,000 parcels. So that's creating quite a lot of chaos. And we like to say the problem's not really just in the last mile. I mean, a courier can easily find a large residential or commercial building, but to find the individual in the building is pretty inefficient and pretty difficult. How do you get the package from the back of the delivery van into the hands of the customer? So this is what we do. We're a smart parcel locker company, and this is a photograph of our system. But essentially, we provide the software, the hardware, the database links, and all the service to make it happen. It's pretty straightforward. We're courier inclusive, which means that every courier can deliver into our system, every retailer, and we're really addressing the problem from the building standpoint. How it works is quite simple. The courier delivers the package into the lockers. A code is then sent to the recipient, and then you can pick it up 24/7. And you can even use your QR code link that we've sent if you don't want to touch the lockers, you want to close it with your elbow. So there is a contactless solution available. And it's a closed system, which means it's really only designed for the people who live or work in the building. We like to talk about how beautiful our lockers are. We can either make them disappear so they're not a feature, or we can make a feature of them. Depends what you're after. And then just to bring it to life, we just have a couple of photographs of some of our installations. This is Sky Broadwater, which is a build-to-rent property on the Gold Coast. And you can see they put their system in the lobby and co-branded it. And they really installed it for two reasons. One, of course, was the tenant amenity of delivering that fantastic experience, but also actually as a cost savings initiative because the concierge was spending so much time sorting through parcels. And this is one of our commercial installations. This is Darling Park in Sydney. And this is actually in a shared service sort of area space in the building. This is about activating that space. So there's a news agency there. You can't see it, but there's a cafe, post boxes are there. There's other things that are drawing people into this space, and this is where they've centralized their parcels. In terms of our sectors, we basically help any building that has a parcel problem, and in our experience, it seems that almost every building does. Everything from commercial through student housing, residential, and university. And so who are we? Well, we're based in Melbourne, and we've facilitated over 85,000 deliveries and collections. So that was just a short kind of 3 minutes about who we are and what we're doing. But maybe to make it more interesting, shall we take a look at the results of the poll, Julian, and see if people have been receiving these "Sorry We Missed You" cards? So there we go. 79% of people have received one of those cards, and probably at some point in time, we don't have time now, but the follow-up question is, of course, how many of you really enjoy going to the post office to get your parcel? Anyway, we'd love to talk about it more. I think we're going to go around and hear from all the companies, and perhaps we can talk more about the experience of packages later.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for the introduction, Lynn. I think, one of the great joys of being at home so much over the last few months is we've received less of those cards. So, but that, of course, is going to change once again into the future. So we'll hear from Lynn a bit more in just a second. Secondly, I'd like to invite Soren to welcome you all. Soren?
Thank you, Julian. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking time to listen to us today. I'm passionate about experiences in real estate, and I guess it sort of started a long time ago. But Work Club is like Julian said, a shared workspace. That's how we started out sort of 6-7 years ago. And our focus was initially on our own community and how to create experiences for that community. The concept behind Work Club is not so much about the space, it's more about diversity in industries and disciplines. And there's a bit of fluff, if you like, but the whole theory goes back to the Renaissance period, Leonardo da Vinci, and I'm going to spare you for that because that's a longer path. But essentially the whole objective was about how do we really create meaningful conversations and encounters between our community members, and that's how we started. Where we have evolved into is now looking at entire buildings and entire precincts and how we can create better connections between people in those. So we talk about connected human ecosystems, and I'll give you an example of a new site that we are just about to open in Melbourne. It's called Olderfleet. It's a 70,000 square meter building. It's a commercial building, Mirvac owned. We have taken 4,000 square meters, which is a combination of workspace, conference facilities, training facilities, business lounge. We have our retail concept, Sagas. We have a public cafe. We have a public lounge bar, which is called Valhalla. We have a lot of different elements that are either for members only, for members and tenants, or for the public. And what we're also doing in that asset is that we're running the front of house concierge services. And we're doing all of that because our objective is to be the smarts of that building from a human perspective. And it's important that we have a touch point with everybody coming in and out of that building on a daily on a daily basis, basically through our concierge services, so that we get to know who's coming in and we get to pull them in, if you like, at least the first time into some of the experiences that we do. So for us and for me, I think the whole magic in whether we are successful in creating these better connected human ecosystems is really our ability to bring people into these experiences that we do. And those experiences, we call them Florence Guild. They sit under the Florence Guild banner, which is from this Leonardo da Vinci theory. That's where the name comes from. But it's really our attempt in an indirect and in a very subtle way to bring people together. And whether that's on a one-on-one basis or whether that's at a 200 people kind of event and everything in between, it's all programmed and all curated to bring people together and to break down some of those barriers that are there if you haven't had that face-to-face interaction. And once we've done that a couple of times, people are connected. And that's where we see a better connected ecosystem. So I guess from an experience perspective, we're trying to create an experience which is not just for our 500 members within Olderfleet, but for the 7,500 people that will frequent that building on a regular basis. And we are taking that further now, and we're working with developers around entire precincts, which is basically using the same principles of, and those precincts includes 5-star hotel, residential, commercial, shopping, and where we are essentially tying all of that together from a human perspective and tying that together with the hardware and looking at the hardware. How do we create physical locations, which is Work Club, which is Sagas, which is Valhalla, these elements in that entire precinct, and how do we program that entire precinct to really create that experience and a different destination to destinations that wouldn't think about that. So I guess that's kind of our sweet spot. That's where we're moving into. It's evolving constantly, and I think we're experimenting with what works and what doesn't work. But at the end of the day, I think we're seeing a change in the market. You know, a building that, you know, 70,000 square meter building 5 years ago would have maybe had 10 tenants, 5 tenants, 10 tenants. Today, it's more likely, or in the future, next 5 years, you're probably going to see 70, 80, 100 tenants in that same assets. So the complexity from a landlord perspective in dealing with that set of tenants is just a completely different scale to what it used to be. And we are really sort of stepping in and trying to partner with landlords on how to build better connected human ecosystems. That's our passion, and that's where we continue to push forward. We have our retail brand, we have our lounge bars, we have these different brands, not really because we want to get into retail or because we want to get into F&B, but it's because they're important pieces of the puzzle of how we connect people and how we touch people. So our bartenders are not bartenders, they're facilitators and connectors. You know, our concierge is not concierge, they are facilitators and connectors. And that's important in the overall scheme, the overall ecosystem of how we get to interact and create those experiences. So I'll probably leave it at that, conscious of time.
Yeah, look, that's a brilliant start, Søren. And I think as a member of Work Club, I very much feel that connectivity and feel truly like a valued member. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things that we experienced when we had to go out of Work Club and back to our homes was a simple phone call from time to time from your team to say hello, and really kept that, you know, very warm human touch alive the whole way through. It's really quite lovely. And so Dominic, I might give you a few minutes as well, just to introduce yourself, a little bit about Air Service and how you think about improving experience in real estate.
Thank you, mate. That was very interesting, both from Lynn and Søren, but it's a interesting flow as well. And what Air Service does is actually not that dissimilar. If it really leads on from what Søren was saying there, in that our core focus is taking what makes a property, whether it's a hotel or a cafe or a building or whatever it is, whatever makes it unique, what makes it special. And, you know, you have your operators and the people in there who put an enormous amount of time, passion, commitment, money into generating a soul or a special offering that makes that place special. But the unfortunate reality, a lot of the time, visitors, whether they're customers or guests or whatever it is, they don't know about all those offerings, or they don't have an easy, intuitive way to access those offerings. So what Air Service does is we bridge that gap. So we take, I'll use a hotel as an example. You take a hotel, and you know, it has an amazing rooftop pool, or there's a great history to the location, or they have a barista which has a special coffee every month, or you know, amazing artwork on the wall. It's an art series hotel, for example. And we provide the digital way to inform the guests of that, and then give those guests a fast, easy, intuitive way to act on that information. And again, that could be making a reservation. It could be leaving feedback about the quality of the coffee. It could be booking room service. It could be ordering a cocktail beside the pool. Whatever it is, it's just linking that physical reality of the property and giving the guests or the customers a way for them to digitally access and be aware of what those special offerings are. And on the flip side, also, if you're a guest, what are you personally interested in? Are you a family? Are you a couple together visiting? Are you a business person visiting for a coffee or for an overnight stay, or you were there for a resort? So, you know, are you allergic to a certain dish? So customizing, again, what are the most important and interesting things for you as a customer or a guest or a user? And that's where we sit. I'm going to give you a very quick product demo just to get a sense of it. There are 3 ways we do this. We have 3 sort of key products. One is we provide white label branded apps that guests and customers can download onto their own devices. Number 2 is tablets either in a room or attached to a table or in a conference room, wherever else it might be. And number 3 is a tablet in a public space. So it's typically a larger tablet. We call that one concierge because it's in a public space you can walk up to and interact with. So I'll do a quick little screen share here for a second. So there you should be able to see, this is a setup we have in place for a Intercontinental Rialto hotel in Melbourne. This is always fully branded for our client. So it's all about them expressing who they are, their brand guidelines, their colors, their images. This is quite a conservative sort of look and feel. It's an Intercontinental hotel. It's quite a high-end hotel. These cards configured for whatever that place wants you to know about and to be able to access. So examples, ordering room service, what's on in the area. If I go through to room service, big, easy, clean, simple to use. We say if people can't figure out the software in the first 5 seconds, you've lost them as a customer. So just nice, big buttons, clean, simple. You get the idea. And then you get things like instant services. Now, this is a very interesting space if you talk about a post-COVID world, because typically, I'll turn it this way, it's a bit more visibility. Things like virtual minibars are becoming more relevant now. It's all about minimizing surfaces to need to be clean. People don't necessarily want anymore to have a robe that's been hanging in a closet. A, cleaners don't want to clean that every time between visits if it's not used. B, as a guest, am I sure that's clean? This way, it's all online. You want a robe, slippers, you order your slippers. You want to book a room turn down, a tray collect. It's all simple, clean, easy. Gives you confidence that where you're staying understands your concerns for cleanliness. Also sustainability. They're not throwing out slippers between guests. You're not having to get rid of dental kits or shampoo conditioners between guests as well. So it really ties into a lot of very important thematic elements that are very live in the world today. Removal of printed material is an obvious one. So, removal, this is a very conservative look and feel again, but, removing of in-room compendiums. That's also relevant for a shared notice board for an office building or for an apartment space. This could be, we find a very positive use case for things like a validated dog walking service that the building thinks is a good service, or maybe it's a child minding service, or maybe it's a laundry, pick up your laundry, whatever it might be. So this is a really good way to provide a virtual concierge that extends beyond, just calling down or whatever, it's particularly on site. Leaving feedback. Did you like the coffee? Did you enjoy your stay? Real-time feedback, very actionable. So you get the idea. So it's really about what did this place want you to know about? Local businesses that they might recommend you interact with. And again, all fully configurable. I'll just give you another difference. So this one here is a quick service restaurant chain, Milky Lane, some of you might have heard of. Again, very different look and feel, less corporate, more engaging, far more cheese. This makes me hungry personally every time I look at it, but you get the idea. It's all about what is that place. So these guys, they're very visually focused. They're very proud of their extravagant offerings. They're a hip hop focused brand, so they have a link through to their recommended Spotify playlist, which is going to take me through to Spotify. So it's all about, what is the soul of the brand? What do you want your guests to know about? How do you want them to feel when they're working with your premises? And this has become really super important through COVID in particular, where maybe you have less face-to-face time with your guests and customers. How do you connect with them when they're not physically there? So there you go. It's a bit of a sense for our service.
Thanks, Dominic. Look, I thought that's fantastic and probably a really good way to dovetail into the first question that I really want to get stuck into. You've got a beautiful product, right? The UI is lovely. And as you say, the brands that sit behind it really translate their way through, I think. Experience has been a real focus in the digital world for quite some time. think about our digital experiences 20 years ago, they were pretty clunky and pretty awful, right? But they've just gotten better and better with, user experience people, user interface people, just a really nuanced focus on that. And so I guess what I'm interested in is, what is the tension and what is the complementarity between digital and human-powered experiences, right? So, I mean, I think, perhaps Soren and Dominic, you sit on different ends of the scale or different parts of the spectrum to each other. What do you see as, the way in which digital-powered experiences and human experiences can kind of work together to create something really robust and rich?
So from our perspective,
yep.
I think I would personally like to see digital always run second to the physical experience. The way I'd like to see air service continue to evolve over the years is that when you arrive at a venue that offers air service, you walk in the door and you will get the most out of that place. You know that you will know about the amazing gym, or be able to speak to Pete, the amazing barista, or whatever it might be, and knowing that immediately you'll get the most out of your stay, or you'll get the most out of your meal, or you'll get the most of whatever it is. But it is getting the most out of the physical experience.
Yeah, so basically that enabling role. Soren.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's from our perspective, we've always said it's not about the tech. It is, but it's in our world, it's not. It's the more invisible that is and the more seamless that is, the better it is. And it's a supporting platform. And it's an important one because sometimes, there are introverts between us who just do not naturally walk up to somebody else and maybe have not had an experience yet through our experiences where they just want to check somebody out, who is that person actually, before they go up and potentially talk or before they even interact. So there are certain reasons, I think, that are often overlooked or forgotten about the importance of that technology platform as well. But for us, it's about that human interaction and it's about that face-to-face. I just came from a meeting this morning where we've been disagreeing. It's a side meeting, basically. There's some variations we haven't agreed on for the last 2 weeks. They've been sort of back and forth through these Zoom meetings. I spent half an hour with everybody involved face-to-face, and we made decisions that we haven't been able to move forward. So it's another sort of validation of the strength of actually being in a room and reading the language, which I just thought was amazing, thinking how difficult it's been to come to a decision on these points where it was actually unbelievable easy face to face. So it's quite a contrast.
Yeah. Also one thing on that as well, one of the interesting things for us is when we first were doing what we're doing, one of the metrics we were measuring was time spent using the platform. And we're like, yes, it's great, people are spending time using the platform. What we've actually evolved that to now is we want people spending the minimum time possible using our software. We want them to interact with it a lot of times, but each interaction for the shortest possible time. So get on there, find your information, do your action, and then get off and get back to the real world.
It's good. It's good to hear about a digital platform that's aim is to reduce time on site, unlike all social media that's trying to capture and hold our attention for as long as possible. And so how about for you, Lynn? So, I mean, Ground Floor is an enabler of the end of, either a delivery or e-commerce experience. How do you see, technology playing a role in that overall shopping experience?
Yeah, so I would just to build on, I guess, some of the other things that we've been talking about. It's quite interesting because, of course, in air services offering, you're providing services that people want to engage with and spend a lot of time doing. People don't want to spend a lot of time receiving the package, right? So we're kind of the opposite in that we take technology and to automate and facilitate, and all the delivery of the package is actually done by the courier or the concierge, right? And so when we talk about bringing together people and technology, we're very much the technology backbone of that. And we're trying to produce a contactless, frictionless experience so that people have more time to go off and enjoy the fantastic experiences that Work Club and Air Services have to offer, because that's more where they want to allocate their time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in that respect, I see each of you as being enablers as opposed to disruptors. So, really taking the foundations of what exists in real estate and making it different or better along different dimensions. And so, when you were thinking about creating your offerings, where did you draw inspiration from? There's lots of other industries and companies that have really excelled in terms of experience and other contexts, and that's relatively new to real estate. So, what other areas did you find helped you to think about how you could deliver real value in a different way?
I'll have a go at that then. I think I kind of started, the whole thing started around diversity in industries and disciplines and trying to get as many different kind of people together in one space. And then it became, the next step was then, well, what will that need to look and feel like from a physical space? What would be the feel of the timber, the steel, the leather, the sensors, the smells, and sort of the physical component of that. And then what would be the experience that you would overlay that with to really connect people, but to try and do it in an invincible way almost, or indirect way, so it wouldn't feel like you're being connected. It kind of just happens. And it started as an experiment, and I think it continues to be an experiment because I don't have the answer except that we just continue to try things, and certain ways of connecting people works better than others. And it just continues to be an experiment, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lynn or Dominic, any areas that you drew inspiration from?
Well, yeah, maybe I'll go next. I mean, it sounds very basic, but I mean, with Uber, it's fantastic technology, right? You order your car, you watch it coming towards you, you can see the drivers, you get all this information. But yet, if you want a parcel, mailboxes have been unchanged for 100 years. It's still a box, and then in goes the card, and then you go down to the store and you wait in line. And it just felt like there was this huge gap in technology that how can we track an Uber car on demand whenever you want it, but yet, the packages haven't changed in 100 years. And so our inspiration really started from receiving too many sorry we missed you cards and thought, look, there's just got to be a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are brands like Amazon that have changed that experience in the lead up to delivery really well. So, your ability to be able to see it leave the warehouse and then be on the way, and then they'd send you an email 2 days before saying it's about to arrive. You can feel the anticipation build, and then that moment of receipt is really something quite spectacular.
Yeah.
And so maybe thinking more about traditional real estate and the role that you play for owners and operators and tenants. I mean, really, the value that has been traditionally provided by real estate, first it was location, and then it was, asset quality, and then it was design, and then it was, perhaps functional use of space, right? And, increasingly experience is becoming part of, the offering to tenants. And so what how do you describe the value that you provide either owners or operators of real estate in differentiating them through experience?
I'll jump in there, I guess. I mean, for us, it's all about, if you've created an experience, making sure that your tenants or guests or whatever else or operators can get the most out of experience. And we sort of say the brands that we have a pretty robust client selection policy to a degree, I guess, in that not everyone is perfect for what we do. And the brands that we want to work with are the ones that have created that experience or are looking to create that experience. And for us, it's all about enhancing that and pulling that through and taking it beyond interacting with your tenants or guests or customers, not just when they're in front of you, and just making sure that you can get the most out of it. If you're passionate about your coffee, tell them about your coffee. If you've got your amazing facial stylist, whatever it might be, or suiting, let them know, let people select, let people interact with that. And then when they get in there, they're getting the most out of it.
Yeah. Sorry?
I was just going to say, I think, COVID-19 is accelerating a change that I think was inevitable anyway in real estate. And the move towards expectations from tenants and users around just a different level of experience. What we are seeing and what we're guessing at our end is that companies are just realizing they don't need the amount of space that they have had in the past, and they are all thinking about how to contract essentially and lower that footprint that they have. But I think there's also an understanding that working from home is not working for everybody either. The experience around the dog or the kids or everything else, that doesn't work for everybody either. So I think there will be a natural move. CBD locations will be smaller for companies, but there will be probably a demand for an experience that is closer to home, more like a hub fringe location where you can still socialize. You know, socialize came up as 54%, I think. You know, and where you have that element that you're part of a community. You can come in and you can meet some co-workers, and you can work from there, but you don't have to commute all the way into the CBD. And from a company perspective, you don't have to take out as much space in a high cost location in the CBD either. So it's just win-wins, where it's more about efficiencies, it's more about an overall experience from a user perspective, which is just, you know, a lot better, and not stuck in old ways of, you know, you have to be present Monday to Friday all day long in an office. So I think we're certainly moving away from that expectation and to a very different experience.
Yeah, what I think might be fascinating around that is if we get to, and I think more and more, because it makes obvious financial sense for a lot of companies to allow more of that work remote situation, is to get to a situation where you can literally choose the people you're working around physically, not based on the company you work for, just on the base of the people you want to spend time with. So you might have, you know, a space of 15 different people from big organizations just working with different companies. So I can go, okay, I would like to work with these 5 friends for this next week, and we just go sit in the space and work together in that space. And also potentially even choose to live in that area purely based on what is the demographic of that area. Like I've got a lot of coders or engineers are moving to places like Berry or the Blue Mountains or whatever it might be, because they're the communities that they're keen to be living around, and it's, you know, you're not limited by the jobs you're looking to fill.
Yeah, it's very true. There's a lot in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand as well, as I understand it. They've got strong internet and very, very big digital community. I mean, to that point, Rob Jenkins, thanks for your comment. Was saying at Westpac they ran a pilot exactly along the lines of what you were referring to with satellite offices. So saying they worked out of regional hubs for a few days each week, which really proved quite excellent. And I think that point is very well made, Dominic, that we don't, you know, particularly in a large corporate like Westpac, we're not engaging with 35,000 people. We're engaging with clusters, you know, so it's our teams or it's the informal teams that we come together with, and, you know, that new models are providing different ways of, I guess, self-organizing and getting together. So
it's an interesting one, that point. Sorry, Julian, just to add a comment to that one, because as you dig a bit deeper, it's actually, I think, you know, some companies it won't work for having that remote hub location either, because people want to be present at the headquarter. They want to be seen. They want to be there for the next promotion. They want to be part of the right projects. So we've heard about companies that tried that, and it actually doesn't work. It doesn't matter what experience you put up. There's a culture that is in such a way that you need to be there and you need to be seen. So I think we'll still have elements of that.
And just building on the wider conversation, I think it'll be really interesting to see how the demographics of the city might change. So some of the companies that I've been involved with, when they've been surveying the workers, the young single people really want to come back. People with young children under 5, desperate to come back. The people in their 40s that are good at technology, who have kids at school all day, don't want to come back. And the people that are kind of over 60, you know, 65, have been doing this for 30 or 40 years, feel like, look, I've been doing this so long, I don't really want to change. I don't want to feel like I'm retiring. And so you could have this strange mix in the city where you might have the middle group missing, or, you know, opting out a little bit. And you could end up with a barbell of demographics. And then the question becomes, what kind of services attract that group, as opposed to the fact that at the moment, if you think about the current office building, there's all these end of trip facilities. There's a lot of bike racks, and, you know, people are cycling to work. And not that young people don't cycle to work, but it seems to me that there's a lot of kind of of those, 35 to 45-year-olds that are cycling in, right? And they've really focused all the services in on that demographic. So there might be a changing, changing services might result if the demographic changes.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I wanted to press on actually from your comments before is really during the last few weeks and months when the community was in one sense anchored in place and then was now distributed, some in, some out. How did you think about maintaining that community experience ongoing and keeping people engaged through that period?
So, like you said, Julian, the first thing we did was to call people and to try and remain or retain some kind of human connection, although that's not the same, rather than emails. So phone calls first, connecting, how are you doing? Is there anything we can do for you? So that was the first priority. And then we do have our tech platform. We do have our in-house platform that just all of a sudden got accelerated 3-5 years in 3-4 weeks. In terms of everything that we were doing on that platform, it just the engagement is just different, at the end of the day. So I think it's just it's there, like I said earlier, as a support, but it's not going to drive a real community interaction. It just does not. And I think as we're seeing members coming back right now, there's almost an excitement about people coming back in and seeing each other face to face. So, I mean, that's what it's about at the end of the day. And that's why people also come back. It's the social aspect and feeling you belong, and it's a home, it feels right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, Sana, our partnerships manager, who's also on the call as part of our team, and I've been discussing this, that the one day a week that we come in feels like an excursion, and it's real excitement to come in to meet with the team. And we have a different, we save our really high quality engaged conversations for the days in which we're together, and we really think that that's so important that we create the space for those types of engagements to happen. And so for you, Dominic, thinking about, I mean, the travel sector, of which mainly is your customer component, has been put on pause, and is starting to wake up a little bit regionally. Question mark as to when it's going to wake up a bit more internationally. What do you think in terms of experience? You gave a few examples of the virtual minibar and clean. Knowing that things are being cleaned. What other experiences are going to make people feel safe to travel, once again, and be able to, I guess, have that holiday experience without any worries in the back of their mind?
Yeah, well, setting aside things like vaccines or anything like that, for me, it's still going to come down to information. I think is going to be the key one. Being, what is this place that you're going to stay? What are they doing to take care of your health? What is their cleaning policy? What is their temperature check policy? Whatever it might be, making that clear and obvious. So when I go to stay there, I know that I'm being looked after. One interesting example, we've got an integration. I should mention, while hotels were our biggest sector for a period, they're very quiet at the moment. So we've seen our biggest growth around the contract food service companies like Compass, Spotless, Delaware North, those kind of companies, which have been keeping corporate cafes, mining sites, defense sites open, but not being able to have face-to-face interactions, or being able to needing, cashless, zero contact transactions. And one of the pieces of technology which we've been putting in place for those companies, which I'm thinking is starting to translate very well with those hotels that are starting to look forward again, is things like density tracking. So we can put a camera at an entrance to a room, and it will on the app that we provide, it will show up for the gym, for example. Is it green? Yep, safe to go in. Orange, nearly full. Red, too busy at the moment, come back later. Same things for cafes, for restaurants, for shared areas, for pools. Just those informational pieces, just keeping people informed about what's going on. And then as a backup for that, you've got to inform them, but obviously keeping it clean. And I think the tie into that too is using your own devices. And Pre-COVID, 90% of our hotel clients were using our tablet in-room solutions. We haven't sold a full tablet in-room solution since then. Now, everyone we're talking to at the moment, the deals we're closing, they're all going the app first. So the app for people to download to their own devices, but then keeping maybe 20 tablets at reception for those people who don't want to use their own device or download the app. So having the flexibility of it to be able to adapt and work between the two. And maybe over time, everyone will get very comfortable with tablets in rooms, and then we can easily put the tablets back in the rooms. But the other thing I will mention on the travel side is that I actually think we're in for a massive, massive travel boom domestically, just because it seems so far like Australia is ahead of the COVID situation. And I actually don't think as a country we were maybe scarred too deeply in terms of, we got off quite lightly compared to a lot of the rest of the world. And I think internally, domestically, we will get back to business as usual in a lot of ways very quickly. And everyone who didn't get to go to Asia or Europe or wherever else this year is going to want to go on holiday somewhere. And I think those regions of Australia, from the Daintree to Northern Territory to Tasmania, are going to get swamped with tourists very quickly.
Yeah, most definitely. I know I'm itching to go on a regional holiday, and it's not that hard. Soren drove down from Sydney to Melbourne just yesterday and made the most of the time as well. So it's very, very easily done. Given Dominic's example of kind of pivoting quite quickly to support new use cases, and that's something that really amazes me with all the entrepreneurs we work with, their ability to turn on a dime and serve new kind of use cases and meet the new conditions. I wanted to ask you, Lynn, what have you done with Ground Floor in terms of repositioning your solution to kind of meet the current circumstances?
Yeah, so interestingly, in a pre-COVID environment, when we talk to commercial buildings, the conversation was very much about delivering an amenity, much like an end-of-trip facility and bike racks. You go in, and one of the things that people in the building want is an easy and convenient way to receive their package. And I mean, that's still very much the case, but of course the conversation's accelerated because WorkSafe has come in and put lots of requirements in buildings in terms of health and safety and density and, preventing disease. And one of the things that they've talked about is contactless delivery. And so there's a lot of rules about where couriers can be and how many people can be in a lift. And so we've rolled out contactless delivery with our system. So you don't actually have to engage or touch our system. You can use your own personal device to walk past and use the QR code to open the door. And, I think that's one type of solution, but I think that drive towards contactless and frictionless, receiving of packages and deliveries is something that is ongoing and certainly something that we've had a lot of demand from, particularly from the commercial customers.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think, a really essential change. We've got to keep reminding myself not to just touch everything automatically as I move through the space. We've got a question from Andrew, who's asked, what do you think is the future of staff engagement? Virtually versus physically, ? For example, is it 1 day per week in the office and the rest at home, or other combinations? And as Work Club, do you support a flexible model like this?
Principally, yes. I don't think 1 day in the office is enough, though, to build a proper culture or strong enough culture from a company perspective. So I'm passionate about, I don't really care when people arrive or when they leave. Of course, certain functions needs to be there for certain times, but it's more about the output. And you can do that from anywhere today, right? But the building the culture and that component, you do need a physical presence. I do believe that is important. And it's interesting here for the last 3 months, we have had very few members in our clubs. They haven't been closed, but next to no members have been there. But the team has actually been coming in, and we haven't asked the team to come in. We've actually said, you can work from home, you can do whatever you like, but they've actually decided to come in and even just work together as teams in the different clubs, because it's they've just done that. And I think it's interesting to actually, and they have all the freedom not to. So that's what they chose. And I just think there's that element where, like I said earlier, you look each other in the eyes and you make decisions and you support each other in a different way, whether it's remotely. But it certainly depends on the job at hand as well. You know, what do you actually need to do?
Yeah, Matt.
I'd probably disagree with that, to be honest, in that I definitely think it's important, but I mean, just using my company as an example, we've been fully distributed for over 12 months now. And we have people in LA, in all around Australia, in Melbourne, in Bury, New York, and we get together once a quarter for an all hands and see each other face to face and get together. And I definitely think there is value for the face to face. But what I think is that it needs to be very planned. It can't just happen. You need to be very conscious of structure to look after the culture and those kind of things. And there are a lot of things you need to do. I think it is an art to be able to deliver that. And there are some really good publications on it, books on it. A company called Basecamp has been remote for a long time. They've sort of been a lot of the time the industry leaders in the ways to managing that. And it is harder. I agree with Soren. It is harder to manage that without a face-to-face component, but I definitely think it's possible. But it needs commitment. It needs, if one person is dialing in remotely on a call, everyone's got to be dialing in remotely on a call. Even if they're sitting next to each other in a room, you've all got to be in the computer looking at your screen. Yeah, it's difficult, but definitely possible, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was speaking to a senior executive in the real estate industry recently, and they were telling me that they think there's a shift from the power of the extrovert to the power of the introvert. So extroverts love the face-to-face. They like to have everyone there. They want to have an audience. They're bigger than life. They want to hold big forums and events. And introverts are sort of quite happy to work in a more remote way. And he had a very sort of developed picture of where the world was going. It was quite an interesting theory.
Yeah, which in some ways has been the rise of digital culture and coding culture itself as well. People squirreling away and just getting deep in their work. With an eye on the time, I've got one final question from Vito for you, Soren. Given the comments about the creative class moving out of cities potentially into places like Blue Mountains and Bury, do you intend to curate a space outside of the CBD? So will there be a work club Byron Bay on its way?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, I will be the first one there. So look, I would like to say thank you very much to all of our panelists today. So Lynn from Ground Floor, Soren from Work Club, and Dominic from Air Services. It's really a treat to see how you're thinking, not just about your solutions, but the ultimate impact for how they will help us come back to space and all be together in interesting ways once again. Thank you to everybody who tuned in for today's session. Our next startBUILD webinar will be on sustainability. And so we'll be looking at the impact of solutions in trying to improve the real estate segment's carbon footprint, energy use, and ultimately, the sustainability of the built environment. So thank you once again to everybody that tuned in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Soren.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.